The Spirit Horse. Public domain reading from Fairy Legends and Traditions of the South of Ireland, circa 1844. The Spirit Horse. The history of Morty Sullivan ought to be a warning to all young men to stay at home and to live decently and soberly if they can, and not to go roving about the world. Morty, when he had just turned of 14, ran away from his father and mother, who were a mighty respectable old couple, and many a tear they shed on his account. It is said they both died heartbroken for his loss. All they ever learned about him was that he went on board of a ship bound to America. 30 years after the old couple had laid peacefully in their graves, there came a stranger to Beerhaven, inquiring after them. It was their son Morty, and to speak the truth of him, his heart did seem full of sorrow when he heard that his parents were dead and gone. But what else could he expect to hear? Repentance generally comes when it is too late. Morty Sullivan, however, as an atonement for his sins, was recommended to perform a pilgrimage to the blessed chapel of Saint Gobnait, which is in a wild place called Balvorny. This he readily undertook, and willingly he lost no time. He commenced his journey the same afternoon. He had not proceeded many miles before the evening came on. There was no moon, and the starlight was obscured by a thick fog, which ascended from the valleys. His way was through a mountainous country, with many cross paths and byways, so that it was difficult for a stranger like Morty to travel without a guide. He was anxious to reach his destination, and exerted himself to do so, but the fog grew thicker and thicker, and at last he became doubtful if the track he was in led to the blessed chapel of Saint Gobnait. But seeing a light which he imagined not to be far off, he went towards it, and when he thought himself close to it, the light suddenly seemed at a great distance, twinkling dimly through the fog. Though Morty felt some surprise at this, he was not disheartened, for he thought that it was a light sent by the holy Saint Gobnait to guide his feet through the mountains to her chapel. And thus did he travel for many a mile, continually, as he believed, approaching the light, which would suddenly start off to a great distance. At length he came so close as to perceive that the light came from a fire, seated beside which he plainly saw an old woman. Then indeed his faith was a little shaken, and much did he wonder that both the fire and the old woman should travel before him so many weary miles and over such uneven roads. In the holy names of the pious Gobnat and of her preceptor Saint Aban, said Morty, how can that burning fire move on so fast before me, and who can that old woman be sitting beside the moving fire? These words had no sooner passed Morty's lips than he found himself, without taking another step, close to this wonderful fire, beside which the old woman was sitting, munching her supper. With every wag of the old woman's jaw, her eyes would roll fiercely upon Morty, as if she was angry at being disturbed, and he saw with more astonishment than ever that her eyes were neither black nor blue nor gray nor hazel, like a normal human eye, but of a wild red color, like the eyes of a ferret. If before he wondered at the fire, much greater was his wonder at the old woman's appearance, and stout-hearted as he was, he could not but look upon her with fear, judging rightly that it was for no good purpose her supping in so unfrequented a place and at so late an hour, for it was near midnight. She said not one word, but munched and munched away, while Morty looked on in silence. "What's your name?" at last he demanded from the old hag. A sulphurous puff coming out of her mouth, her nostrils distending, and her eyes growing redder than ever when she had finished her question. Plucking up all his courage, "Morty Sullivan," replied he, "at your service," meaning the latter words only in civility. "Ububo," said the old woman. "We'll soon see that," and the red fire of her eyes turned into a pale green color. Bold and fearless as Morty was, yet much did he tremble at hearing this dreadful exclamation. He would have fallen down on his knees and prayed to Saint Gobnite, or any other saint, for he was not particular, but he was so petrified with horror that he could not move in the slightest way, much less go down on his knees. "Take hold of my hand, Morty," said the old woman. "I'll give you a horse to ride that will soon carry you to your journey's end." So saying, she led the way, the fire going before them. It is beyond mortal knowledge to say how, but on it went, shooting out bright tongues of flame, and flickering fiercely. Presently they came to a natural cavern in the side of the mountain, and the old hag called aloud in a most discordant voice for her horse. In a moment a jet-black steed started from its gloomy stable, the rocky floor whereof rung with a sepulchral echo of clanging hooves. "Mount, Morty, mount!" cried she, seizing him with supernatural strength, and forcing him upon the back of the horse. Morty, finding human power of no avail, muttered, "Oh, that I had spurs!" and tried to grasp the horse's mane. But he caught at a shadow. It nevertheless bore him up and bounded forward with him, now springing down a fearful precipice, now clearing the rugged bed of a torrent, and rushing like the dark midnight storm through the mountains. The following morning, Morty Sullivan was discovered by some pilgrims, who came that way after taking their rounds at Goganebara, lying on the flat of his back, under a steep cliff, down which he had been flung by the Fuka. Morty was severely bruised by the fall, and he is said to have sworn on the spot by the hand of O'Sullivan, and that is no small oath, that never again to take a full quart bottle of whiskey with him on a pilgrimage.